When it comes to knee pain, most people assume the solution is to simply rest more. But here's something surprising. Research consistently shows that the best way to protect aging joints is not to move less, but to move more in the right ways. Knee pain, especially after 60, is one of the most common reasons people reduce their activity. And when activity goes down, so do muscle strength, balance, and mobility. This creates what scientists call a negative feedback loop. Pain leads to inactivity, which weakens muscles around the joint, which in turn makes the pain worse. The good news is, you can flip this loop in your favor, and today I'll show you how. Neuroscience tells us that our brains and bodies are constantly adapting based on the signals we send them. When you move your knees through safe, controlled exercises, you're not only strengthening muscles, you're also teaching your nervous system that the joint can handle load without danger. This reduces the brain's threat signal that amplifies pain. In other words, pain is not just about tissue, it's also about perception and brain signaling. That's why intelligently designed movement can feel like medicine. The challenge, of course, is that many traditional leg strengthening routines, squats, lunges, jogging, can feel intimidating or even impossible if your knees are already sore. This is where chair-based exercises become powerful. They provide stability, reduce fear of falling, and let you focus on strengthening the muscles that matter most for knee health: the quadriceps, hamstrings, glutes, and calves. In this video, I'll walk you through 6 simple chair exercises that can help reduce knee pain and build strength, even if you haven't exercised in years. Each movement is backed by research in physiology and rehabilitation science, and you'll learn not just how to do them, but also why they work, what's happening in your muscles, joints, and even your brain when you practice them consistently. By the end, you'll have a toolkit of safe, science-backed movements you can do at home to support your knees, improve your balance, and restore confidence in your body. So let's get started. When most people think about knee health, they focus on the joint itself, the cartilage, the tendons, or the ligaments. But the truth is, one of the biggest determinants of whether your knees feel painful or stable lies not in the joint, but in the muscle just above it, the quadriceps. The quadriceps, or quads, are the large muscles on the front of your thighs. Their job is to extend the knee, in other words, to straighten your leg. They also act as shock absorbers. Every time you walk downstairs, lower into a chair, or catch yourself from tripping, your quads take on much of the force that would otherwise be directed into the knee joint itself. Here, what the research shows. Studies published in the Journal of Orthopedic and Sports Physical Therapy have found that people with stronger quadriceps report significantly less knee pain and greater mobility, especially in conditions like osteoarthritis. In fact, quad weakness has been identified as one of the strongest predictors of functional decline in older adults. So why do the quads matter so much? Think of the knee like a hinge on a door. If the hinge is loose and unsupported, every push or pull wears it down faster. But if the hinge is surrounded by a solid frame, in this case, strong muscles, the joint operates more smoothly, with less stress. By strengthening the quads, you're reinforcing the frame that stabilizes the knee. Now, the challenge is that traditional quad strengthening exercises, like squats or lunges, can put pressure on the joint, which may feel intimidating if your knees are already sore. That's where the seated leg extension comes in. This simple, controlled movement isolates the quads without adding compressive force to the knee joint. Here, how to do it. Sit tall in a sturdy chair with your feet flat on the floor, knees bent at about 90 degrees. Slowly straighten one leg until it's extended in front of you, tightening the muscle on the front of your thigh. Hold for 2 to 3 seconds, then lower it back down with control. Alternate legs, aiming for 10 to 15 repetitions per side. A simple tool to apply here is progressive overload, not in the sense of heavy weights, but by gradually increasing challenge. You can add light ankle weights, hold the extension longer, or increase your reps. This keeps the quads adapting and prevents plateau. What's happening in your brain when you do this is fascinating. Every time you contract the quadriceps, your motor cortex, the part of your brain that controls voluntary movement, is sending signals down your spinal cord to recruit muscle fibers. With repetition, those pathways become more efficient, a process called neuroplasticity. Over time, this doesn't just make the muscle stronger, it also improves your brain's ability to coordinate movement smoothly and with less effort. And there's another layer. Isometric holds, like pausing at the top of the extension, can actually reduce pain. Research shows that sustained contractions trigger inhibitory pathways in the spinal cord that dial down incoming pain signals. In plain language, holding the leg out not only strengthens the muscle, it can also temporarily quiet pain. Have you ever noticed how your knees feel stiffer after sitting for a long time? That stiffness is partly because the brain and muscles haven't been communicating actively during that time. A few sets of leg extensions can act like flipping a switch, waking up the quads, increasing blood flow, and resetting the joint for movement. The key is consistency. Just a few minutes a day can produce noticeable changes over weeks. Think of it like building a savings account for your knees. Every repetition is a deposit, protecting you against the withdrawals of wear, tear, and time. When practiced regularly, seated leg extensions are not just an exercise, they're a form of joint insurance. They send a message to your brain and body. This knee is supported, this knee is strong, this knee can move without fear. One of the easiest but most overlooked exercises for knee and leg health is seated marching. At first glance, it might look almost too simple, lifting one knee and then the other while sitting in a chair. But behind this small movement is a surprisingly powerful blend of science, improved circulation, enhanced joint mobility, and better neuromuscular coordination between your legs and core. Hear why this matters. When we age, one of the first things to decline is not strength, but coordination, the ability of our muscles, joints, and nervous system to work together smoothly. A study in the Journal of Aging and Physical Activity highlighted that hip flexor and core strength are directly tied to walking speed and stability in older adults. Why? Because every step you take requires your brain to quickly alternate signals, lifting one leg, stabilizing the other, and keeping balance through the torso. Seated marching mimics that exact rhythm in a controlled way. It's essentially practice walking without the risks of imbalance or falls. You're training your hip flexors, the muscles that lift your thighs, along with the stabilizing muscles of your abdomen and lower back. At the same time, the movement gently mobilizes the knee joint, keeping fluid circulating and reducing stiffness. Think of it like oiling a hinge that hasn't moved for a while. By repeatedly flexing and extending the joint, you're distributing synovial fluid, the body's natural joint lubricant, across the surfaces of the knee. This not only improves comfort, but also provides essential nutrients to the cartilage. Hear how to do it. Sit tall in your chair with your feet flat on the floor. Lift one knee as though you're taking a marching step, keeping your core gently engaged. Lower it back down with control, then switch to the other leg. Alternate legs in a smooth rhythm for 30 to 60 seconds. A simple tool here is to sync the movement with your breath. Inhale as you lift, exhale as you lower. This creates a natural packing mechanism and engages the diaphragm, reinforcing core stability. What's happening in your brain during this exercise is fascinating. Each alternating step activates neural circuits involved in gait, including the central pattern generators in your spinal cord that help automate walking. By practicing seated marching, you're essentially keeping the wiring sharp, ensuring that the transition from sitting to standing or walking across a room remains fluid and reliable. Have you ever noticed how your balance feels less steady after a few days of inactivity? That's because the brain starts to down-regulate circuits it isn't using. Seated marching acts like a reset button, reminding your nervous system how to coordinate left and right, step after step. And here's the empowering part. Even if you can't go for long walks right now, this exercise helps preserve the neural blueprint for walking, so that when you are ready, your body can execute the pattern with confidence. Now, if you're finding value in these science-backed tools already, consider subscribing to this channel. Each week, we break down the latest neuroscience and behavioral research into practical habits you can apply for better health, sharper focus, and greater energy. Subscribing not only keeps you informed, it also supports this growing community of people committed to living stronger, healthier lives. Returning to our exercise, a progression you can try is adding light ankle weights or holding the lift for 2 to 3 seconds at the top. This increases activation in both the hip flexors and quadriceps, giving you even more protective strength around the knee joint. Another variation is to place your hands lightly on your thighs while marching, adding gentle resistance. This engages the core further and makes the movement more challenging without needing equipment. Consistency, again, is key. Just a few sets of seated marching, spread throughout the day, can improve circulation, reduce stiffness, and reinforce the brain's control over walking mechanics. Think of it as maintenance work, the same way you'd regularly start a car engine to keep it running smoothly, even if you're not driving it long distances. The beauty of seated marching is that it's accessible to almost everyone, yet it pays dividends across balance, coordination, and confidence. By practicing it daily, you're not just keeping your knees mobile, you're protecting your. If I had to choose just one exercise to measure and improve functional independence after 60, it would be this one, the chair-assisted sit-to-stand. Because the ability to rise from a chair without using your arms is not just about leg strength, it's about independence, confidence, and even longevity. Large-scale studies in gerontology have consistently shown that performance on the sit-to-stand test is one of the strongest predictors of fall risk, mobility, and overall quality of life in older adults. In fact, researchers often use how many times a person can rise from a chair in 30 seconds as a proxy for functional health. Think about it. Every single day you stand up from a chair, a bed, or a toilet. If those movements feel difficult, or if you rely heavily on your arms, it's a sign that the muscles of your legs, hips, and core aren't providing enough support. Over time, that weakness can lead to compensations, like leaning heavily on one side, or using momentum instead of strength, which increases strain on the knees and raises the risk of falls. Here's the science. The sit-to-stand movement strengthens the quadriceps, hamstrings, and glutes all at once. These are the prime movers that stabilize your knees. At the same time, it activates the core muscles that help you control posture and balance. Essentially, it's a full-body coordination drill disguised as a simple exercise. Here, how to do it safely. Sit tall in a sturdy chair with your feet flat on the ground, hip-width apart. Scoot slightly forward so your heels are directly under your knees. Place your hands lightly on the arms of the chair or on your thighs for balance. Lean your torso forward slightly, press through your heels and stand up slowly, engaging your thighs and glutes. Sit back down with control, resisting the urge to plop into the chair. If standing without support feels too difficult at first, use your hands lightly on the chair arms. Over time, aim to rely less on your arms and more on your legs. The goal is progress, not perfection. Have you noticed how much harder it feels to stand after sitting for a long stretch, like after watching a movie or riding in a car? That's because your muscles temporarily lose activation, and your nervous system hasn't been rehearsing the movement. By practicing the sit-to-stand, you're essentially greasing the groove, teaching your brain and body to execute the movement more efficiently. A simple tool to apply here is repetition. Start with 5 controlled sit-to-stands, rest, and repeat. Over weeks, increase your total to 10 or even 15 repetitions in a row. That endurance translates directly into real-life capacity, climbing stairs, rising from low couches, and moving with confidence in public spaces. What's happening in your brain during this exercise is remarkable. Each time you stand, your motor cortex sends signals down to large, powerful muscle groups, while your cerebellum fine-tunes the balance aspect. The more you practice, the stronger those neural pathways become. And here's the inspiring part. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire and strengthen circuits, remains active well into later life. You are never too old to build new strength. In addition, research has shown that exercises like sit-to-stand not only improve muscle function, but also reduce fear of falling. That's critical, because fear itself can be paralyzing. People who are afraid of falling often move less, which accelerates weakness. By practicing this movement in a safe, stable way, you're building both physical and psychological resilience. Over time, chair-assisted sit-to-stands can transform from something you have to do into something that empowers you. Each repetition is a reminder that your legs are strong, your body is capable, and your independence is in your hands. When you can rise from a chair with ease, you're not just exercising, you're declaring to yourself and to life, I can get up, I can move forward, I am not stuck. When people think of strong legs, they often imagine the quadriceps, those big muscles at the front of the thighs. And yes, they're critical for knee health. But there's another group of muscles that often gets neglected, and their weakness can quietly set the stage for chronic knee pain: the hamstrings. The hamstrings run along the back of your thighs. Their main role is to bend the knee and assist the glutes in extending the hip. But here, the key: they also act as stabilizers for the knee joint. In fact, studies in rehabilitation science show that when the hamstrings are weak compared to the quadriceps, the imbalance increases stress on the joint, contributing to pain and instability. Researchers call this the hamstring to quadriceps ratio, and when it's off, your knees are more vulnerable. Think of the knee joint like a tent pole. If you only have ropes pulling from the front but none pulling from the back, the pole wobbles and sways. Strengthening the hamstrings provides that balanced tension, keeping the joint centered and stable. A simple, accessible way to do this at home is with seated hamstring curls using a resistance band. This exercise directly targets the back of your thigh without requiring machines or heavy equipment. Here, how to do it. Sit tall in a chair with both feet flat on the ground. Loop a light resistance band around the ankle of one leg and anchor the other end to a sturdy object in front of you, like the leg of another chair or a heavy table. Keeping your thigh still, pull your heel back under the chair against the resistance, as though you're trying to drag your foot along the floor. Slowly return to the starting position and repeat for 10 to 15 controlled repetitions. Switch sides. At first, the movement might feel small, but that's the point. You're training precision and strength in a muscle group that often gets overlooked. Over time, you can increase the band's resistance or hold the contraction for 2 to 3 seconds at the peak to amplify the benefits. What's happening in your body during this exercise is twofold. Mechanically, the hamstring is pulling the shin backward, taking strain off the front of the knee. Neurologically, your brain is learning to recruit those posterior muscles more effectively, which helps balance the forces acting on the joint during walking, climbing stairs, or standing from a chair. Have you ever noticed how much strain you feel in the front of your knees when going downstairs? That's often because the hamstrings aren't doing their share of the work. By strengthening them, you create a more even partnership between the front and back of your legs, which translates to smoother, less painful movement in daily life. Here, what the research shows. A clinical trial published in Arthritis Care and Research found that older adults who performed hamstring strengthening exercises reported reduced pain and improved function, even in cases of knee osteoarthritis. The takeaway is clear: balance matters. Supporting the joint from both sides reduces stress and enhances resilience. And if this insight is helping you see your body differently, not as fragile but as adaptable and capable, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Each week, I bring you science-backed tools like these, grounded in neuroscience and physiology, to help you build strength, improve focus, and feel more in control of your health. Subscribing keeps you connected, and it's one of the best ways to support this work so we can reach more people together. Now, one of the most empowering things about seated hamstring curls is how they build confidence in the back of your legs. For many, this muscle group has been neglected for decades. Reconnecting with it doesn't just relieve knee strain, it improves your posture, balance, and even walking endurance. Think of it this way: your hamstrings are like the brakes on a car. If they're weak, every stop feels jarring and the rest of the system wears down faster. Strong hamstrings smooth out the ride, protecting your knees from unnecessary shock. With just a few minutes a day, you can restore that balance, teaching your muscles and brain to share the load evenly. That shift doesn't just reduce pain, it reclaims freedom of movement, step by step. When we talk about knee health, most people think of the muscles directly above or behind the joint, the quads and hamstrings. But here's something that often gets missed. The calves, those muscles below the knee, play a surprisingly critical role in keeping your knees healthy and your legs strong. The calves, primarily the gastrocnemius and soleus muscles, act like a pump every time you move your ankles. Each contraction squeezes blood upward, pushing it back toward the heart. In fact, researchers sometimes refer to the calf as the second heart of the body because it's so essential for circulation. Better circulation means more oxygen and nutrients delivered to the joints and more waste products carried away. That's one reason why sitting too long can make your knees feel stiff. The pump has been idle. Here, what the research shows. Studies in the journals of gerontology have found that calf strength is directly correlated with walking endurance and balance in older adults. Weak calves mean less stability when you push off the ground, which increases stress on the knees and hips. Strong calves, on the other hand, distribute force more evenly through the legs, easing the burden on the knee joint. Think of your calves like shock absorbers on a car. Every time you walk, step, or land, they help buffer the impact. Without strong shock absorbers, the force goes straight into the frame, in this case, your knees. The good news is that calf strength and circulation can be trained right from your chair with two simple movements: ankle pumps and calf raises. Ankle pumps. Sit tall in your chair with both feet flat on the floor. Lift your toes upward while keeping your heels down. Then point your toes forward like you're pressing a gas pedal. Repeat this back and forth motion for 30 to 60 seconds. This movement keeps blood moving through the lower legs, reduces swelling, and maintains ankle mobility, which is directly linked to knee comfort. Seated calf raises. Sit with your feet flat and knees bent at 90 degrees. Press through the balls of your feet, lifting your heels as high as you can. Pause for 2 seconds at the top, then slowly lower your heels back down. Aim for 10 to 15 controlled repetitions. A simple tool to increase challenge is to place a light weight, even something like a water bottle or a small bag of rice, on your thighs for added resistance. What's happening in your brain when you do these movements is both mechanical and neurological. Mechanically, you're strengthening the calf muscles that support walking and balance. Neurologically, you're stimulating proprioceptors, tiny sensors in the ankle and foot that send feedback to your brain about position and movement. The more active these sensors are, the sharper your balance and coordination become. Have you ever noticed that when your ankles feel stiff, your whole gait feels off? That's because your nervous system is receiving less feedback from the ground. By practicing ankle pumps and calf raises, you're restoring that feedback loop, reminding your brain how to control each step with precision. These movements are also an excellent reset button during long periods of sitting. For example, if you've been at the computer or reading for an hour, taking just 60 seconds to do ankle pumps can boost circulation, reduce knee stiffness, and re-energize your legs. And here's the empowering part. Even though the calves are small compared to the thighs, Their role in protecting your knees is outsized. Strong calves improve push-off when you walk, reduce the strain on your quadriceps, and make every movement from standing to climbing stairs feel smoother. So while it may seem like a minor detail, this small daily practice adds up. Over weeks, you're not just building muscle, you're improving circulation, balance, and confidence with every step you take. Think of ankle pumps and calf raises as a tune-up for your legs. Quick, simple, and profoundly effective in keeping the whole system running smoothly. If there's one exercise that combines strength, mobility, and pain relief into a single, accessible movement, it's the seated straight leg lift. This deceptively simple exercise targets the quadriceps and hip flexors, two muscle groups essential for stabilizing the knee and supporting smooth, confident walking. Here, why this matters. Many people over 60 struggle with conditions like osteoarthritis, which reduces the protective cartilage in the knee. That loss of cushioning can make bending movements uncomfortable, especially with traditional exercises like squats or lunges. The seated straight leg lift provides a solution. It strengthens the muscles that support the knee without compressing the joint. Here, how to do it. Sit tall in your chair with one leg bent, foot flat on the ground. Extend the other leg straight out in front of you, keeping the knee as straight as possible. Tighten the thigh muscle and hold for 3 to 5 seconds. Slowly lower the leg back down. Repeat 10 to 15 times per side. A variation is to add a small ankle weight or loop a resistance band around your foot for increased challenge. But even without equipment, the isometric contraction, the act of holding the muscle tight, creates significant strength gains. What's happening in your body when you perform this exercise is twofold. First, the quadriceps are working hard to keep the leg extended, reinforcing the muscle's ability to stabilize the knee during daily activities like walking, rising from a chair, or climbing stairs. Second, the hip flexors, the muscles that lift your leg, are being trained. These are often weak in older adults, and weakness here can contribute to shorter steps, slower walking speed, and even balance issues. The neurological side of this is just as fascinating. When you hold the leg straight, your nervous system activates pathways that dampen pain signals from the knee, a phenomenon documented in clinical research on isometric exercise and pain modulation. In other words, by simply holding your leg out, you're not only building strength, but also sending calming signals to your brain that can temporarily reduce discomfort. Have you ever noticed that certain movements feel easier once you wake up the muscles beforehand? That's because the brain and muscles communicate more effectively after activation. Straight leg lifts serve as that activation, preparing your knees for smoother, less painful movement throughout the day. Here, what the research shows. A study in clinical rehabilitation found that patients with knee osteoarthritis who performed straight leg raises consistently reported reductions in pain and improvements in function over just 6 weeks. The takeaway is clear: small, consistent practice rewires both the muscles and the brain's perception of pain. A simple tool to apply here is the ladder method. Start with 5 repetitions per leg, then add 1 extra rep every 2 or 3 sessions until you reach 15. This gradual progression ensures sustainable growth without overwhelming the joint. The empowering part of this exercise is its accessibility. You can do it while watching TV, reading, or even listening to this channel's content. Over time, these moments of small effort accumulate, building the kind of quiet strength that changes daily life, standing taller, walking more freely, and reducing the hesitation that often comes with knee pain. Think of the seated straight leg lift as a signal you're sending to your body. These muscles matter, this joint is supported, movement is safe. Each repetition is both a physical and neurological vote for strength, stability, and confidence. By practicing it consistently, you're not just training your muscles, you're training your brain to believe in your body again. And that belief, backed by science, is one of the most powerful tools for healthy aging. We've now walked through 6 powerful chair exercises, each one grounded in science, and each one designed to relieve knee pain while building the strength and resilience that keeps you moving with confidence. Let's quickly recap. With seated leg extensions, you reinforced your quadriceps, the shock absorbers of the knee. With seated marching, you retrained coordination and circulation, practicing the rhythm of walking in a safe, controlled way. With the chair-assisted sit-to-stand, you built the single most important skill for independence and longevity, the ability to rise on your own power. With seated hamstring curls, you restored balance to the back of the legs, protecting the knee from excessive strain. With ankle pumps and calf raises, you engaged the second heart of your body, boosting circulation and balance from the ground up. And with seated straight leg lifts, you strengthened without compressing the joint, reducing pain while reinforcing stability. Together, these 6 movements create a comprehensive toolkit for protecting your knees and reclaiming strength, not in theory, but in practice, right from your chair. Now the bigger picture. What's happening here isn't just about muscles or joints, it's about feedback loops. Pain often leads us to move less, which weakens the body and makes pain worse, a downward spiral. But with intentional, science-backed exercise, you flip that loop. Movement reduces pain, strength builds confidence, and confidence leads to more movement. Over time, that becomes a self-reinforcing upward spiral of health. Here, what the neuroscience tells us. The brain doesn't just passively record pain and mobility, it actively reshapes itself based on what you practice. Each time you perform these exercises, you're not only training muscles, you're sending a message to your nervous system. This body is strong, this joint is safe, this movement is possible. That is neuroplasticity in action. And this is where psychology meets physiology, because every repetition is also a vote of confidence, a small act of reclaiming agency over your body. The truth is, health after 60 isn't about chasing youth, it's about building strength, stability, and freedom for the years ahead. So here's my challenge to you. Choose just one of these 6 exercises and do it today. Maybe it's 5 seated leg extensions while you read. Maybe it's a round of ankle pumps during your next TV show. Just start. Because consistency, not intensity, is what rewires both your body and your brain. If you commit to even a few minutes a day, you'll be amazed at how quickly stiffness gives way to mobility, and hesitation gives way to confidence. And as you make this part of your routine, remember, you're not doing these movements in isolation. You're part of a growing community of people who want to use science, psychology, and practical tools to live stronger, healthier, and more empowered lives. If you found value in this, I'd love for you to like this video, leave a comment sharing which exercise you'll start with, and subscribe to the channel. That way, you stay connected to weekly tools like these grounded in research, designed for real life, and aimed at helping you move, think, and feel at your best. Your knees are not just hinges. They're gateways to freedom, and with the right practice supported by science, you can keep them strong and pain-free at 60, 70, and beyond. So start today. 1 rep, 1 movement, 1 choice at a time, because small actions done consistently create lasting transformation.